Congratulations, you've been hired as an IT consultant. Not exactly the dream job you pictured when you were studying computer science, right? But here we are. The pay's decent when the contracts come through. The hours are, well, they're whatever the client needs them to be. And somebody's got to keep the digital world running. My name is Alex, and I've been working as an independent IT consultant for about 4 years now. 4 years of emergency server calls, mysterious network outages, and clients who think turning it off and on again is a personal insult to their intelligence. But before I tell you what you're really getting into, let me give you some background. Because if you're smart, and I hope you are, since you'll be handling other people's data, you'll want to understand exactly what this job can involve beyond fixing printers and resetting passwords. I got into IT consulting the way most people do, through a combination of technical skills and economic necessity. My startup had failed spectacularly, burning through investor money faster than we could justify our existence. I needed work, I had certifications, and there's always demand for someone who can make computers do what they're supposed to do. My first major contract came through a referral from a former colleague. A small digital marketing agency needed someone to set up their new office space and handle their IT infrastructure. Standard stuff: network setup, server configuration, basic security protocols. The company was called Nexus Digital, run by 5 guys in their early 20s who decided to strike out on their own after working together on a previous project. They were young, ambitious, and had the kind of confidence that comes from never having experienced a major business failure. The job seemed straightforward enough. They'd rented office space in a converted mansion about an hour outside the city. Old building, lots of character, reasonable rent. The kind of place that looked great in photos, but probably had wiring installed sometime around the Korean War. I should have paid more attention to why the rent was so reasonable. When I first visited the property for the initial consultation, I was genuinely impressed. The mansion was enormous, easily 4,000 square feet, with 10 bedrooms, 2 full kitchens, and enough common space to house a small corporation. The architecture was beautiful, all hardwood floors and original crown molding and windows that looked out over farmland that stretched to the horizon. It was also completely empty, which should have been my first red flag. How long has this place been vacant? I asked Dylan, Nexus Digital's founder, and the guy who'd signed the lease. The landlord wasn't really specific, Dylan said with the casual indifference of someone who'd never had to deal with the hidden costs of occupying problem properties. Said the previous tenants moved out a few months ago. I walked through the space, taking notes for the network installation. The building's original electrical system had been updated sometime in the 1990s, but even the updates were showing their age. The phone lines were ancient. The plumbing made concerning sounds when you turned on the taps. But the bones of the place were solid, and the price was impossible to argue with. In a market where decent office space went for $25 per square foot, they were paying the equivalent of about $3. What's the catch? I asked. Places like this don't rent for pocket change unless there's a problem. Dylan shrugged. Owner said he just wants someone reliable in the space. Apparently he's more concerned with finding good tenants than maximizing profit. That should have been red flag number 2. I spent the next week designing their network infrastructure and ordering equipment. Standard business setup, wireless access points throughout the building, a server closet in what used to be a large bedroom on the 2nd floor, Ethernet drops in every room they planned to use as office space. The installation took 3 days. I worked mostly alone, running cable through walls that were thick enough to muffle sound from one room to the next. The building was so well constructed that I could be drilling in the basement and someone on the 2nd floor wouldn't hear a thing, which turned out to be relevant later. Everything went smoothly during the initial setup. The guys from Nexus Digital were excited about their new space, already planning how they'd use different rooms for different purposes. The large common area would be their main workspace. Individual bedrooms would be converted to offices for client meetings. The master bedroom, with its oversized windows and attached bathroom, would serve as their break room and informal meeting space. I finished the installation on a Friday afternoon, tested all the connections, and handed over the documentation. Standard stuff. The network was running perfectly, all devices were communicating properly, and their internet speeds were actually better than expected for such a rural location. You guys are all set, I told Dylan as I packed up my tools. Call me if you run into any issues, but everything should work smoothly. I didn't hear from them for 3 weeks. When Dylan finally called, It wasn't about technical problems. "Alex," he said, "I know this might sound weird, but have you ever worked in a building that was, I don't know, haunted?" I laughed, assuming he was joking. "Is your router making spooky sounds? Because that usually just means the cooling fan is dying." "No, seriously," Dylan said. "We've been having some strange experiences here. Things that don't have technical explanations." "What kind of things?" Dylan was quiet for a moment. "Can you come out here? I'd rather show you than try to explain over the phone." Something in his voice made me take the request seriously. I'd worked with enough IT systems to know that unexplained problems usually had very explainable causes once you looked closely enough. But Dylan sounded genuinely unsettled, which was unusual for someone who normally approached problems with the systematic confidence of a born troubleshooter. I drove out to the mansion the next afternoon. The moment I walked into their main workspace, I could tell something had changed. The atmosphere felt different, heavier somehow. The guys were still working, but there was a tension in the air that hadn't been there during my installation. "Show me what's happening," I said. Dylan led me to the server closet on the second floor. The room had been converted from what was probably a bedroom, with server racks where a bed used to be and networking equipment mounted on walls that had once displayed family photos. "The servers keep shutting down," Dylan explained. "Not crashing, shutting down. Clean shutdowns, like someone's manually powering them off." I checked the logs. Sure enough, the servers had been shutting down randomly over the past 2 weeks. But the shutdown commands weren't coming from any authenticated users. According to the system logs, the computers were receiving legitimate shutdown signals, but from sources that shouldn't have had administrative access. "Have you changed any passwords recently?" I asked. "Given access to any new users?" "No one else has admin privileges," Dylan said. "And the shutdowns are happening at weird times, like 3 a.m. when no one's here." I spent an hour reviewing their security settings and checking for malware. Everything looked clean. No unauthorized access attempts, no suspicious processes, no signs of external intrusion. "Could be a hardware issue," I said finally. "Sometimes failing power supplies or overheating can cause unexpected shutdowns." "When did this start happening?" "About a week after we moved in," Dylan said. "But it's not just the servers. Other weird stuff has been happening too." "What kind of weird stuff?" Dylan looked uncomfortable. "Files moving between folders. Printers turning on by themselves. Sometimes we'll come in the morning and find computers that were shut down the night before running programs no one remembers starting." I'd seen similar problems before, usually caused by scheduled maintenance tasks or automatic updates running at odd hours. But Dylan's descriptions were more specific and more persistent than typical automated processes. "Let me set up some additional monitoring," I said. "I'll install logging software that tracks every system command and network communication. If something's causing these issues, we'll catch it." I spent the rest of the afternoon installing comprehensive monitoring software on their entire network. The system would record every file access, every login attempt, every command executed on any computer in their network. If there was a technical explanation for their problems, the logs would reveal it. This should capture everything. I told Dylan as I finished the installation, "I'll review the logs remotely over the next few days and see what patterns emerge." I checked the logs every day for a week. What I found didn't make sense. The monitoring software was recording hundreds of commands that weren't being executed by any of their employees. File transfers happening at 2 a.m. Applications launching on computers that were supposed to be in sleep mode. Most strangely, the logs showed someone accessing the network from a computer that didn't exist. According to the records, there was a device on their network with the host name Margaret PC that was actively communicating with their servers. But Dylan confirmed that no one named Margaret worked for the company, and there was no computer with that host name in their inventory. I called Dylan to discuss what I'd found. "There's definitely something unusual happening on your network," I told him. "But it's not malware or unauthorized access from outside. The commands are coming from inside your building." "What do you mean from inside?" "I mean there's a computer on your network that shouldn't exist, and that computer is accessing your files and controlling your servers." Dylan was quiet for a long moment. "Alex, can you come out here tonight? After hours. I want to show you something." "What kind of something?" "Just come out here around 10 p.m. Don't bring any equipment. Just come and see." That evening, I drove to the mansion with more curiosity than concern. I'd been troubleshooting mysterious IT problems for years, And in my experience, there was always a logical explanation. Someone had forgotten about a network device. A scheduled task was running with incorrect parameters. A piece of hardware was malfunctioning in an unusual way. I was not prepared for what I found. Dylan met me at the front door, along with 2 other Nexus Digital employees, Jake and David, both software developers in their early 20s. "Thanks for coming," Dylan said. "We wanted someone objective to witness this." He led me through the main workspace to the staircase that went to the 2nd floor. The building was dimly lit, with only a few overhead lights providing illumination. Our footsteps echoed on the hardwood floors. "The server closet is up here," Dylan said as we climbed the stairs. "But first, I want you to see something else." We walked down the 2nd floor hallway to what had been the master bedroom. Dylan had mentioned they were using it as a break room, but when he opened the door, I saw it was set up more like a conference room, with a large table and chairs arranged for meetings. "Look at the wall behind the conference table," Dylan said. I looked. On the wall where a headboard might once have been, someone had drawn symbols in what looked like red ink. Not random graffiti, careful, deliberate symbols that formed a pattern around a central point. "That wasn't here when we moved in," Jake said. "It appeared about 2 weeks ago. We come in one morning, and there it is." I walked closer to examine the symbols. They weren't painted or drawn with marker. The red marks looked like they'd been applied with something thicker, something that had absorbed into the wall material rather than sitting on the surface. "Has anyone in your company done this?" I asked. "No one will admit to it," David said. "And it would be a weird prank anyway. These symbols, they're not random. They look like they mean something." I had to agree. The symbols were arranged in a precise pattern, with consistent sizing and spacing that suggested either artistic training or familiarity with symbolic systems. But I had no idea what they might represent. "Show me the server closet now," I said. We walked down the hall to the room where I'd installed their primary networking equipment. Dylan opened the door and gestured for me to look inside. The server racks were running normally, their indicator lights blinking in the steady patterns that meant everything was functioning properly. But there was something else in the room that definitely hadn't been there during my installation. On the wall opposite the servers, someone had mounted an old computer monitor, the kind with a thick CRT display that probably dated from the 1990s. The monitor was connected to power and displaying a desktop background, but there was no computer visible anywhere in the room. "Where's the computer that's connected to that monitor?" I asked. "That's the thing," Dylan said. "There is no computer. We've searched the entire room. The monitor has a power cable and a video cable, but the video cable doesn't connect to anything. It just ends in the wall." I knelt down and traced the video cable. Sure enough, it disappeared into a small hole in the wall that looked like it had been drilled specifically for the cable. On the desktop displayed on the monitor, I could see several folder icons and what appeared to be an active network connection. "Margaret PC," I said. "What?" "That's the computer that's been showing up in your network logs. Margaret PC. This monitor is displaying the desktop of a computer that doesn't physically exist." As if responding to my words, the monitor's display suddenly changed. A file browser window opened, and I watched as someone, or something, began navigating through folder after folder of files. Files that looked like they contained Nexus Digital's client data. "Is someone controlling that remotely?" Jake asked. I shook my head. "There's no computer connected to this monitor, but something is definitely controlling the display." We watched for several minutes as the invisible computer user browsed through files, opened documents, and even launched what appeared to be email software. The actions were purposeful and methodical, as if someone was conducting routine office work on a computer that existed only as a display on a monitor connected to nothing. "This is impossible," I said. "Tell that to our client files," Dylan said grimly. "Whoever or whatever this is, they have access to everything on our network." That night marked the beginning of my strangest IT consulting contract ever. Over the next several weeks, I tried every technical solution I could think of to explain what was happening at the mansion. I replaced all their networking equipment. The problems continued. I completely reformatted and reinstalled their server software. The mysterious network activity persisted. I brought in additional monitoring equipment to track electromagnetic signals and network traffic. The results only made the situation more confusing. According to my instruments, there really was a computer on their network that was physically located in the mansion but couldn't be found. The device had a valid IP address, was running Windows XP, which was already obsolete by then, and was actively communicating with their servers. But searches of the entire building revealed no such computer. More disturbing was the discovery that Margaret PC had administrative access to their entire network and had been systematically copying their files to an unknown location. We need to change all our passwords and revoke all existing access permissions, I told Dylan during one of our weekly progress meetings. If this is some kind of sophisticated hacking operation, we need to lock them out immediately. Dylan shook his head. We've tried that 3 times. Every time we change the network security settings, Margaret PC adapts. It's like whoever is controlling it has insider knowledge of our systems. That suggests someone in your company is involved, I said. That's what we thought too. But we've tested everyone's access privileges, monitored everyone's computer activity, even changed the network passwords without telling anyone except the 5 original founders. Margaret PC still finds a way in. I was running out of technical explanations. But I'm an IT professional, not a paranormal investigator. I kept looking for logical solutions to what appeared to be an illogical problem. Then I made the mistake of staying at the mansion overnight. Dylan had asked me to monitor the network during prime activity hours, between midnight and 4 a.m., when most of the unusual computer activity seemed to occur. I set up a temporary workstation in their main office area and prepared to spend the night tracking network communications in real time. The first few hours were routine. I watched normal automated processes running on their servers, occasional check-ins for mobile devices, the usual background chatter of a small business network. Around 1 a.m., Margaret PC came online. I watched my monitoring software as the mysterious computer logged into their network and began systematically accessing files. But this time, instead of just observing the network logs, I decided to try to communicate with whoever was controlling the device. I opened a chat window and sent a message to Margaret PC. Who are you? The file browsing activity stopped immediately. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then a chat window opened on my screen, and a reply appeared. Who are you to be asking questions in my office? I stared at the message. Someone was definitely controlling the computer, and they were responding in real time. I typed back, this is a business office. You don't have authorization to access these systems. The response was immediate. I've been working in this office for 30 years. You're the one who doesn't belong here. My heart rate spiked. Working in this office doing what? Bookkeeping, filing, data entry. The same work I've always done, though the computers have changed considerably since I started. I looked around the empty office, trying to process what I was reading. What's your name? Margaret Holloway. I was Mr. Davidson's personal assistant until the business ended. I grabbed my laptop and did a quick internet search for Margaret Holloway and Davidson. What I found made my hands shake. Margaret Holloway had been a bookkeeper and personal assistant who worked in the mansion during the 1990s, when it had housed the business offices of Davidson Art Restoration. According to news articles from 1997, Margaret had died in a car accident while driving home from work during a particularly bad winter storm. The articles mentioned that she'd been working late that night, finishing year-end financial reports in the upstairs office of the mansion where Davidson ran his art restoration business. I typed, Margaret, what year do you think it is? The response took several minutes to arrive. 1997. Why are you asking such strange questions? And why are all these files about marketing and advertising? Where are Mr. Davidson's client records? I sat back in my chair, trying to rationalize what was happening. Someone was playing an elaborate prank. They'd researched local history, created a fake computer identity, and were messing with Nexus Digital's network as part of some complex practical joke. But even as I tried to convince myself of that explanation, I knew it didn't make sense. The computer activity was too consistent, too detailed, and too technically sophisticated to be a prank. And more importantly, the person communicating with me seemed genuinely confused about the current situation. I decided to test the theory. Margaret, can you tell me what month it is? December. I'm trying to finish the quarterly reports before Christmas. Mr. Davidson wants everything completed before he takes his family on vacation. I checked the calendar. It was August. Margaret, look at the date on your computer screen. What date does it show? Another long pause. Then, that's very strange. The computer says it's August 2016, but that can't be right. I was just working on the December 1997 reports. I spent the next hour chatting with Margaret, trying to understand her perception of what was happening. According to her, she was sitting at her desk in the mansion's upstairs office, working on bookkeeping tasks for Davidson Art Restoration. She could see her computer screen, her desk, and her office surroundings exactly as they'd been in 1997. But she was also somehow aware of the files and systems belonging to Nexus Digital, which confused and frustrated her. "These marketing files don't belong in Mr. Davidson's system," she wrote. "Someone has been storing unauthorized data on our servers. I've been trying to organize it properly, but I don't understand what most of these files are for." I realized that Margaret's unauthorized access to their network wasn't malicious. She was trying to do her job as a bookkeeper and data management assistant, but she was applying 1997 organizational systems to 2016 business files. From her perspective, she was cleaning up a messy computer system. From Nexus Digital's perspective, she was randomly moving files and disrupting their workflow. "Margaret," I typed, "I need to tell you something that might be difficult to understand." "I'm listening." Davidson Art Restoration closed in 1998. Mr. Davidson sold the mansion and moved away. The people working here now are running a different business. The chat window stayed empty for a long time. Then, "That's impossible. I was just talking to Mr. Davidson yesterday about the Henderson contract." "Margaret, what's the last thing you remember clearly, before you started noticing these strange files on the computer?" Another long pause. I was staying late to finish the year-end reports. It was snowing very heavily. Mr. Davidson told me I should drive carefully going home because the roads were getting slippery. I told him I would finish just this one more file and then leave. According to the newspaper articles I'd found, Margaret had died that night, driving home in the snowstorm. I closed my laptop and sat in the empty office, trying to process what I'd learned. Either I was communicating with the spirit of a dead bookkeeper who didn't realize she'd died, or I was the victim of the most elaborate and psychologically sophisticated prank in IT history. Over the next several weeks, I continued monitoring the network and occasionally chatting with Margaret. The conversations convinced me that, whatever was happening, it wasn't a prank. Margaret's knowledge of the mansion was too detailed and historically accurate. Her confusion about modern technology was too consistent and realistic. Her concern about organizing Nexus Digital's files was too genuine and well-intentioned. Most importantly, she was helping their business. Despite the initial disruption, Margaret's presence on their network was actually beneficial. She had decades of experience with data management and bookkeeping, and she was applying those skills to Nexus Digital's files. Their client records became more organized. Their financial data was more accurately categorized. Their project files were systematically backed up and archived. She's like having a full-time data administrator. Dylan told me during one of our progress meetings, "The files have never been better organized. Aren't you concerned about the supernatural implications?" I asked. Dylan shrugged. "Look, I don't pretend to understand what's happening, but Margaret isn't causing problems. She's solving them. Our data management has improved dramatically since she started helping, and she's not interfering with our actual work. She only accesses the systems during off hours." "What about the symbols on the wall? The strange atmosphere in the building?" "We got used to it," Jake said. "It's not scary anymore. It's just part of working here, like having a really dedicated night shift employee who prefers not to be seen." I had to admit their approach was pragmatic. From a technical standpoint, Margaret was functioning as an extremely capable system administrator who worked for free and never took vacation days. Her presence was improving their operational efficiency, but I was still bothered by the larger implications. During one of my late-night monitoring sessions, I asked Margaret about the symbols that had appeared in the conference room. "Oh, those," she typed. "I was trying to mark the boundaries of my workspace. In my time, Mr. Davidson used similar symbols to designate areas where restoration work was being conducted. I thought it would help prevent interference between my work and the marketing people's work." "Where did you learn to draw those symbols?" "Mr. Davidson taught them to me. He said they were traditional craftsmen's marks used to protect important work from outside influences. He used them on all his restoration projects. I did some research into Davidson Art Restoration and found several news articles about the business. David Davidson had specialized in restoring antique paintings and artifacts, particularly pieces with historical or religious significance. Several articles mentioned his use of traditional preservation techniques. and his reputation for taking on difficult projects that other restorers wouldn't attempt. One article from 1996 included a photo of Davidson working in his mansion office. Behind him on the wall, I could clearly see symbols similar to the ones that had appeared in Nexus Digital's conference room. The more I learned about Davidson's work, the more I understood why his assistant might have continued her duties even after death. Davidson had been obsessive about preserving important cultural artifacts. According to several interviews, he believed that certain objects held spiritual significance that transcended their physical existence. It wasn't much of a leap to imagine that someone who'd spent years working with preservation techniques designed to maintain the essence of historical objects might have applied similar principles to preserving her own purpose and identity after death. Margaret wasn't haunting the mansion. She was continuing to work there. I explained my theory to the Nexus Digital team during a meeting in late September. Based on my research, I said, Margaret Holloway spent 8 years working as Davidson's assistant, specializing in the preservation and organization of culturally significant materials. Her work was her identity. When she died, that identity remained connected to this building and continued functioning. So she's a ghost with a work ethic, David said. She's a consciousness that defined itself through professional purpose, I replied. And that consciousness is still trying to fulfill its professional obligations. Dylan leaned back in his chair. The question is, what do we do about it? Do we need to do anything? Jake asked. She's not causing problems. She's actually making our work easier. I had to agree. From a technical support standpoint, Margaret was the ideal end user. She was competent, well-intentioned, and worked entirely during off hours when she wouldn't disrupt normal business operations. Her presence on the network was actually improving their data management practices. I think the real question, I said, is whether you're comfortable sharing your office space with a deceased employee. The Nexus Digital team discussed it and decided to treat Margaret as a permanent but invisible member of their staff. They would continue using the mansion as their office space, but they would acknowledge her presence and try to accommodate her workflow. They even started leaving written notes for her, requesting specific data organization tasks, or asking her to focus on particular aspects of their file management. Margaret would complete the tasks overnight and leave status reports in a shared folder. It was the strangest IT support arrangement I've ever been involved in, but it worked. I continued providing technical support for Nexus Digital for another 18 months. During that time, Margaret became an integral part of their operations. She maintained their databases, organized their archives, and even provided historical research assistance for clients who needed information about vintage design trends or marketing techniques. The business thrived. Their client retention rate was exceptional, partly because their data management was so efficient that they could quickly access any information about previous projects or client preferences. Their project completion times improved dramatically because Margaret was handling all the administrative overhead that normally slowed down creative work. She's the best employee we've ever had. Dylan told me during my final consultation. Never calls in sick, never complains about overtime, never asks for raises or benefits. What about the other members of your team? Are they comfortable with the situation? We hired 2 new people last year, Jake said. During the interview process, we explained that the office has a unique administrative system, and that some tasks are handled by off-site contractors who prefer to work during non-business hours. Nobody's ever complained. I asked if they told new employees about Margaret specifically. We let them figure it out gradually, David said. People are more accepting of strange situations when they discover them naturally rather than having them explained up front. When my contract with Nexus Digital ended, I documented Margaret's presence in their systems and provided detailed instructions for future IT support providers. Any technician working on their network would need to account for an extra computer user who accessed the systems during overnight hours. I also included Margaret's contact information, the chat system she used, in case future IT consultants needed to coordinate with her directly about network maintenance or system updates. It was the most unusual technical documentation I've ever written, but it seemed necessary. Nexus Digital continues operating from the mansion. According to my last conversation with Dylan, Margaret is still managing their data systems and has become even more efficient as she's learned to work with modern software and networking protocols. She's adapted to cloud computing, Dylan told me. She's actually better at managing our online storage systems than most of our human employees. The arrangement has been so successful that Dylan has started recommending the mansion to other small businesses looking for office space. He's careful about the referrals, though. Not every business would be comfortable with Margaret's working style. You have to have the right attitude, he explained. If you're open-minded about unconventional workplace arrangements, Margaret is an incredible asset. If you're rigid about traditional office protocols, you're probably better off finding a different location. From a technical support standpoint, the experience taught me that IT consulting involves more than just managing hardware and software. Sometimes you're managing relationships between human workers and systems that don't fit conventional categories. Margaret was never a problem to be solved. She was a resource to be integrated into existing workflows in ways that benefited everyone involved. If you're considering a career in IT consulting, you should be prepared for situations that won't have clear technical solutions. Sometimes the best approach is to work with unusual circumstances rather than trying to eliminate them. You'll encounter software that behaves unexpectedly, hardware that fails in creative ways, and network issues that challenge everything you thought you knew about how computers work. You'll also occasionally encounter clients who have developed workflows around elements that exist outside the normal parameters of technical support. If you're flexible, observant, and willing to document thoroughly even when documentation seems impossible, you'll do well in this field. If you insist that every problem must have a conventional solution, you might want to consider a different career path. Because sometimes the best IT support involves helping clients optimize systems that include components that shouldn't technically exist. And sometimes those components turn out to be the most reliable and efficient parts of the entire network.